is Divya Martin. Welcome to our Shenomics research report launch. We're very excited for today, and we're very excited to just, listen to all the perspectives that we are going to hear from our amazing panelists here. I want to give you a brief introduction and also take you through what the agenda for today's session is. Shenomics, as all of you might know by now, is an organization that is a mindful leadership platform for women. And last year, we actually took the whole year to really deep dive into what it takes for aspiring women leaders, especially in India, to be able to reach C-suites in their own organizations or in their careers. Because as the research really is not very positive at this point. In 2020, India had one of the lowest percentages of women in the workforce in more than 20 years. It's almost 20% now, when it was close to 27% 20 years ago. And we were really curious as an organization also that works in the space of leadership development for women, really what is the reason behind it? And we kickstarted our research last year, and we've done a lot of deep diving into that, which we will take you through today as well. A brief sharing of what the agenda looks like today. We will start it off with some opening remarks from Bhavna, who's our founder of Shenomics. We also have Vidya Lakshmi, who is going to be sharing a few thoughts from her own life, and also from her perspective in terms of what the whole landscape for women leaders looks like today. And then we have an amazing panel discussion with our panelists who you've observed for a few minutes before I started, where we will be also talking a little bit more in detail about their own experiences, what they have observed in their roles, etc. Then we'll have my colleague Manisha, who will be taking us through some key highlights of the study, as well as sharing a little bit more detail about some really interesting findings, to be honest. And then we will also have a section for Q&A, because we'd love to also hear if you have any comments, if you have any questions you'd like to ask anyone from the panel or any one of us at Shenomics about the research. Please feel free to put it in the chat box. And we will address all questions towards the end together, because we do have dedicated time for that. But as and when a question pops up, please feel free to put it in. On that note, Bhavna, I'm handing this over to you.
Thank you, Divya. A very warm welcome to all of you. This is a very exciting moment for us, because we get to really add to the thought leadership that currently exists in the space of women's leadership. And for us, this whole question of what does it really take to support women in ascending to leadership roles is a question that's more than just of academic interest. This is something we care about deeply, which is why this is our very core, it's a core mission and vision for us, because we firmly believe, as the research has proven time and time again, that when you do support women in reaching for their highest professional potential, it really is a triple win. It's a win for the women, it's a win for the organizations that they work for in terms of creating better business outcomes, as well as creating a much more conducive culture for all. And of course, it's a win for the world when you help unleash the capabilities that are there in each and every one of us to solve our most pressing challenges. One thing I will say at the outset, even though our work involves working very intimately with women and really supporting them in every way possible through our work in training, mentoring, coaching, etc., we in no shape or form believe that the entire onus or burden of closing the leadership gap rests on the shoulders of women alone. This is a multidimensional issue which requires a multi-pronged approach from a variety of stakeholders who have to, and we all have to work at this together, coming at it from all different angles. So speaking of different stakeholders, we spoke to a number of them. for the purposes of conducting this research. And one of them that I now want to introduce to you is someone we really hold in high esteem. And I'm really thrilled to invite her to share a few opening remarks with us. And that's Vidya Lakshmi. And I'll just briefly share a background of Vidya. So Vidya is a chartered accountant and an economics graduate by background. She began her career at PwC in Chennai in the audit and advisory services group. And then post her stint at PwC, she went on to spend 15 plus years at Goldman Sachs in Bangalore, working across a variety of business areas, from investment banking to the securities business to working as the chief of staff of the CEO, and eventually leading the HR function for Goldman Sachs in Bangalore. And she's currently on a break and enjoying time with her two sons, which we are secretly thankful for, because I'm not sure if we would have gotten the kind of generous time and support that we've received over the last few weeks from Vidya, now that she has a little bit more time on her hands. So on that note, I do want to welcome and extend a very warm welcome to Vidya to just share a few opening remarks with us. Over to you, Vidya.
Thank you, Bhavna, and very good evening to everybody. It's wonderful to be here. I think after my break, I haven't done much of panel sessions or speaker sessions, so it's sort of bizarre to get back to this. But very, very happy to be here, especially because it's it's a topic that's very close to my heart, women's leadership. And in the last role I played, as the head of HR, obviously a huge focus for us, in Goldman as well. I just want to first start by, congratulating the, Shenomics team, under the leadership of Bhavna for just putting the effort on this, on this research. I'm sure it's a tremendous amount of hard work and tireless effort that has gone into, what is being presented today and will be, presented in the coming months, as this is the first report. I think every effort in this direction of women's leadership is meaningful and will make a difference to multiple people. So huge congratulations and gratitude for everything that you do. Now, as I read the research and the 9 competencies that have been presented, I was obviously forced to reflect on my own 20 plus year career. And specifically, I think there are 2 competencies that have served me very well, and I have benefited from, which are 1, a courageous mindset, and 2 is the visible presence. I think time and again in my career, the skill to speak up at the right time, to the right person with the right content is something that has made a huge difference in raising my profile, providing me with the right opportunities, as well as I think defining my whole leadership style and who I am as a leader and how people perceive me. I thought what I'll do is just share one incident. I'm not good with giving general advice, so I'll just share something that I think reflected is something I reflect on a lot, I think, and had an impact on the way I present myself as a leader. And the incident happened, I think, a couple of years back. I had just taken over as a head of HR for Goldman. Obviously, I didn't have much of an HR background. I was from the business, and I ended up being featured on the Glass Hammer. And for those of you who don't know about the Glass Hammer, it's this sort of global organization that creates a lot of career content, specific to women, and also features a number of profiles of, successful women. So I got featured in that. They asked the usual set of questions on how you grew in your career and all that. And so it happened that same week, we also had our regular, operating committee meeting, and we had a number of leaders, the top, 20, 25 leaders, and we had our CEO there. And as he gave his, leadership updates, he also happened to mention that, Vidya got, featured in this Glass Hammer, and congratulations to her. And he went on to say, Vidya was featured, and heavy hitters like, I don't know, Lisa and Erica, and he rattled off a bunch of names of women, in Goldman who were in New York. And so when he said that, I paused and I thought to myself, does he think I am not a heavy hitter? Like some fluke that I showed up on this, glass hammer. And in my mind, I was like, what the hell? Like, how dare he say that? And often when you have moments like this, you sort of just let it pass and you're like, whatever, who cares? But I didn't want to let it pass. So I stopped him in the middle and I said, like, I asked him, like, don't you think I'm a heavy hitter? Why did you say Vidya? And these heavy hitters sitting in New York. And he was surprised for a moment. He had a good laugh about it and a chuckle, and he went on to say, I correct myself. Homegrown heavy hitters like Vidya, like Lisa, like whoever, in Goldman who've been featured in the Glass Hammer. And believe me, I'm not suggesting that we go around challenging our CEOs for everything that we disagree with. But one, I had a very good relationship with him, so I knew that he would take this in the right spirit, and it's something I felt very strongly about. I think it was defining. For me, it was defining, how I was being presented in front of a senior group of people, and that was important to me. So I decided to challenge his language. Now, had it been somebody else that I didn't know as well, I would have probably done it privately and not in sort of a public, forum. Now, what was interesting was that after the episode, there were a number of women, we always do this, we applaud each other and, oh, great job, you called out the CEO and all of that. But what was interesting is not just women coming up to me. I think a number of men coming up to me and saying that, wow, like you had the courage to say that to the CEO, and sort of, calling that out. It also showed the CEO in good light because he accepted the feedback, he corrected it on the spot. And I think that helps in setting the culture of what is acceptable, in an organization, who you can challenge, who can speak up, in what forum you can speak up, etc. So I think in my career, that speaking up and having the courage to do so has been sort of a superpower. And I think it's especially important for women who are aspiring, to senior leadership positions, to make sure that their, voice is heard and their presence is felt. So, for women who read this research, I sincerely hope you discover your superpower. Or at the minimum, you build on the strengths of the 9 competencies, depending on wherever you are in the range of the 9 competencies. And for leaders, both men and women who read this research, I hope you continue to create an environment that allows women to discover these competencies and their own superpowers and reach their potential. So I'm eagerly waiting to hear the perspectives of all the panelists today. I haven't attended a panel discussion in like ages, so I'm just going to sit back and like enjoy, the perspectives of everyone. And once again, huge congratulations to you, Bhavna, and your entire team. And I'll hand it back to you to take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vidya, and thank you for sharing such an inspirational and powerful anecdote to really bring to light how important it is to lead with courage and to intentionally draw attention to one's presence, one's visible presence, because as you rightly said, it is one of the core competencies that we uncovered in our research. I would love to now move on to the panel discussion. We have a great group of eminent leaders with us, each of whom has been very generous in giving us their time and sharing their insights with us for this research. And that is why when we thought about whom we should invite, these were the 4 names that really came top of mind, because each of these leaders has been leading by example, and in their own way is genuinely and passionately working towards creating greater diversity in leadership. So in no particular order, let me just quickly invite everyone. I'll keep the introductions just to their titles for now. So the first, I'm so glad to welcome Pankaj Rai, Pankaj Rai, who is no stranger to many of you, as we just saw, is a senior vice president of strategy at Wells Fargo. Welcome, Pankaj. Then we have Simar Singh. Simar Singh is currently a managing director at UBS. Then we have Saloni Vijay, who is a general manager and cluster IT head at Vodafone. And finally, we're really glad to have Radhika Ramesh, who is an executive vice president and a global delivery head for CIS in India for Capgemini. So a very warm welcome to all of you. So one of the first questions I will begin with to set the context for this discussion, and also it is connected to the research that we conducted. One of the primary questions that we try to address through the first study that we're releasing in the 4-part series is around competencies, leadership competencies. And we asked both senior male and female leaders, what are the distinguishing competencies that they see in women leaders, if any? And of course, we saw and heard a range of opinions on that question, with some saying they don't really distinguish between leadership competencies for men or women, and some who were very enthusiastic in saying, yes, of course, there are a set of competencies that women uniquely excel in. And the last year in particular is a testament to that, in the post-COVID world, where many share their observations of women leaders leading with emotional intelligence and really creating the kind of environment for their teams where they could really be supported supported and held with a lot of resilience. So I'd be curious to hear from each of you. What are your observations, and where do you stand on this question? Are there any competencies that women in particular excel in? So Pankaj, maybe we'll begin with you.
Hello. Yeah. So I think I was actually thinking about this topic before this began, and there's a lot of discussion about how has the pandemic shaped your thinking, and what were you thinking before, and what are you thinking now? So one of the things that I came back with, that this question of what is important to you, what are the leadership competencies that have stayed with you, and all of that. My thought goes back to a few years ago when my older daughter went to college, and I was asked to give her some advice on what she should do. And in when we were younger, I think the older generation used to give us some mantra that "Hey, take this mantra, you'll be like when you are in doubt, you should follow that." Nowadays, all of us MBAs give our kids some frameworks, right? This is a new age mantra, which is a framework. So I came up with a 5C framework, which I said, "Beta, this is something which you should remember, and this will be good for you," and things like that. And that 5C framework, of course, was derived based on the two, I would say, mega trends that I observed at that point in time. And in my mind, they haven't changed. And they were really deglobalization and disruption. And these two trends didn't exist in our time. In fact, we were globalizing, and we were quite linear in some sense when we were growing up. So I thought, these are the two new things which are happening in your life. And therefore, the 5Cs, which I felt, which are, qualities that you should, imbibe, which will be helpful for you in future, were really in my view, in that order. So the first C is curiosity, which should ideally lead to compassion, which is appreciating and understanding, embracing everyone around you, leading to conviction, which is your place in the sun on what you want to do in that whole context. And the last one, second last one, being creativity, saying do something creatively. And lastly, communication, which is in my mind more of a reflection and thinking, and then going back to the curiosity, and the virtuous cycle comes back again. So I was quite pleased with myself, because this is my wife's order to give my daughter some advice, and I thought I gave a great advice. And I said, oh, you know what, this actually should apply to me and everyone else as well. And now when I look back, I think this pandemic has just accentuated all of those trends. Whether it is deglobalization and Atmanirbhar, we have all been confined to our homes. We aren't going out anywhere. We are totally deglobalized. And if you look at disruption, our default has become home versus default used to be office in the daytime. So everything is just accentuated those things. So to me, these 5Cs seem to be relevant, not gender-based, not time frame based. Still, I think this is something which I would like to live by, and I would sort of propagate that this is something which is worthwhile and which virtue that others can also think through.
Great. That's a great framework, Pankaj. Thank you. Simar, what about you? You're on mute.
Thank you. Um, the problem of coming right after Pankaj is that he gives such a nice jazzy package around it that irrespective of what you want to say is taken out of the window. But frankly, I think the two key things in my mind which are critical and for women this comes naturally is being creative and being multitaskers. And in this post-pandemic world, I think both of these things are really critical. Observe any women at work at any activity that they're doing, they are able to whip up a magic with nothing available for all practical purposes. Uh, get a man to do that, impossible to do uh, at all points in their experience for all practical purposes. And I think those two those two areas continue to add value as Pankaj mentioned, the way we are moving on to a more globally disruptive and rapidly changing world, you need someone who's able to adapt on the fly with whatever is available and manage that chaos rather than waiting for everything to be perfect and everything to be available and 100% confident in their ability to take a decision or take an answer. So I think that is the superpower that all women have. They just don't take risks enough for them to be able to use them at work.
All right. We'll come back to the question on risks very soon in a follow-up question. But for now, Radhika would love to hear your thoughts.
Since both Pankaj and Simir mentioned about the COVID situation, it was exactly the same month last year we all got pulled into the first in our lifetime experience, I would say, for most of us. Looking back now, I see that the pandemic really forced us to experience all the competencies actually in a perfect sequence. At Capgemini, there are 6 leadership competencies we relate to. The first one is LANIAC. It's a French word which means the fighting spirit. Then comes agile player, active connector. Then you have people developer, profit shaper, and finally business builder. The first was Laniac. We moved from 0 to 90% work from home in just 7 days. This was the fighting spirit that surfaced in all of us that made that possible, Bhavna. Then came the agile player, getting all our operations to become digital, right from our core operations to our support functions. Every step of every activity we performed had to be virtually enabled. Recruitment, onboarding, training, everything, and it was all to be done on the go. We all did it with zero service disruption. We did this transition in a truly agile way. With people not being in front of us, people going through various challenges in their personal front, people moving out of their current locations, rushing to their hometowns, lockdowns, fears of impact, etc., etc. We had all elevated ourselves to a totally new level of connecting with our people. It was no longer the employee that we had to fortify our connection with, but also their families. So collaborating within and outside our organization, yes, all of us became very active connectors. We had to reinforce and learn to adapt to the new normal. We had to learn to ensure we stay connected virtually. We always assumed that there would be an office we would go into, that we will always be able to travel freely around the world. We built a BCP plan that used to be city, country agnostic. This pandemic just questioned the very foundation that we had to unconsciously start building based on some preset assumptions. So we had to develop our people to think differently so that we had to focus on being people developers. Yes, then we had to see how our business got impacted and find agile ways we contain our costs, as at that time we were looking at a future that was very, very scary. So our competency of profit shaper took a new meaning for us. Then finally came the business builder competency. This taught us how to leverage the opportunities that this pandemic had created, be it in the huge cloud transformation that all the business enterprises were now brought into as the top list agenda in their agenda, or for the fact that the entire new segment of workforce in rural India we could now tap into. Yes, Bhavna, the pandemic totally sponged all the 6 leadership competencies in all of us, I would say, as leaders across not only Capgemini, across all organizations.
Great. Thank you, Radhika. And yes, many of the competencies that you spoke of actually feature on our list as well, like resilience, business acumen, connecting, relationship building. All of these we've had an opportunity to hear from a number of people. So many people would echo your thoughts. Saloni, would love to hear your perspective. Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry. I was not able to unmute myself. So there was some pop-up was coming. So yeah, hi everyone. So Bhavna, according to my views, like the competency, I completely don't believe that, there are some competency which where, it is differentiated for women and men don't adopt it. But yes, the way we have been created, the kind of thinking level which women have is really different than men, and that's how our competencies are also different. So as Simar also mentioned that, it's a multitasking, I would say it's a balancing kind of competency where women leaders know, how to do a perfect balance in terms of, commanding the team, but with the lot of empathy. So women knows this in a very, very better way, that, how to get the work done, but not to, in a very, very commanding level. They take everyone with them, and then, whatever task they are supposed to deliver, or, or whatever things they are supposed to deliver, they do as a team, and that is one thing which women does it better. And second thing is, women itself are very, very inspirational in terms of men often sees that, because they also see their spouses, their families, women in their family, their home, and they know that women has to do a lot of responsibility at the home, plus they are coming to office and they are doing the equal kind of responsibility. They are taking the same kind of responsibility in the office also. So when, as a woman, when you talk about yourself, you talk about your stories, it gives more impact to their male community or to their male counterparts. So that is a kind of competency which women has, and they take genuine interest. I'm not saying that men doesn't take the genuine interest, but yes, they take genuine interest for uplifting their teams, their people, their growth by motivating, mentoring, by doing the best kind of coaching. So that is something which I feel differentiated a woman leadership competencies than a male leadership competencies.
Great. Thank you, Saloni. And yes, absolutely. I think this is one of the things we heard from a variety of individuals. And in fact, it features very prominently in our competency framework as human-centered leadership, which is exactly as you said, this idea of balancing a focus on the business with focusing on the needs of the people around you as well, and doing so genuinely. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so next, I'd love to just touch upon, I suppose, step back and take looking at the space of women's leadership. We are definitely way beyond that stage where we all know it's not just a nice to have. That just goes without saying. There is a clear need and imperative for it. And many leaders, in fact, shared with us how this is, in fact, a rational response. Creating greater diversity in leadership is a rational response to the kind of world we're moving into and what that world expects of us if we're going to succeed individually as well as an organization as a whole. I know, Pankaj, you have some interesting thoughts on this, which you shared with us. So I'd love to ask you what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure, Bhavna. In fact, I like to create frameworks and themes based on observable data. So even that 5C, there is a proper derivation because your kids won't listen to you. So on this topic also on why diversity is important, I have some kind of a derivation based on observable data. And my view is that we all produce what the society consumes. So we are all deployed in producing something. The society used to consume material goods, and now 90% of it is services. So I think the consumption pattern has changed so drastically. So the need for horsepower or physical power has gone down. You only need cognitive power to produce whatever the world needs. Now, if you look at the cognitive power, it can be broken up into EQ and IQ. We have seen women, surpassing boys. At least I never came first in my science class ever. There was a girl who was always number one. So if you look at all these results, girls do very well. In EQ, we don't even talk about it. It's assumed that they are better. So the question always is that if they have superior raw material, what's the reason for us to be even debating this topic? They should be getting ahead. And I think the answer probably lies in that they want to excel in all those 5 subjects. They want distinction in being a good mother, good sister, good whatever. And the boys just want one maths or one career and saying, I just want to do just one thing and that's it. So my personal view is that the future anyway belongs to the women because the requirement is cognitive in nature and they are anyway better than others. I think the question is, how can they do better? My view is I think they can delegate a bit more. They are not very good at delegation. So as in the office, you can delegate a lot to other people. I think you can at home also try to delegate a few things. And at different points in time, you can focus more on career and, all those 5 subjects, you don't have to get distinction every year. You can choose to say, I will choose to be a good mother for a couple of years, but a career woman for another or whatever. So you can be more thoughtful about when to choose what and not be trying to get, distinction all 5 subjects. I think I do have a message for men as well. Why do you want to just distinction in just one subject? Ye jeena bhi koi jeena hai lallu. Why only one subject? Why can't you be, many other things at different points in time? So my view is both the genders can learn from each other and come slightly in the middle. And I think both will be more happier with that move. And at different points in time, actually go to the other extreme and come back and so on. So I think the world needs more flexibility in these gender roles over time. Just like everything else is agile, why can't these roles be agile for both the genders to choose at different points in time? And I have a great friend who's a house husband because his wife is doing very well. And he said, okay, I'm going to sit at home. And I keep telling both my daughters that you should choose a partner wisely.
Absolutely. That's probably the best advice we can give to women. Having that enabling environment at home and in the organization, absolutely, unquestionably, it plays a big role. So one of the other themes I would say that we uncovered from our research and we heard from a number of people is that leaders really need to walk the talk. When you see leaders role modeling, prioritizing this kind of commitment to gender diversity that Pankaj just spoke of, it really goes a long way in creating that kind of conducive culture and has a really strong trickle down effect. So Radhika, I'll turn to you now because I know one of the things you shared with us is how you've really very intentionally and in a very focused way gone above and beyond to create a gender balanced team around you. Can you share with us what are some of the actions that you took or some of the changes that you made that allowed you to make that happen?
Sure. The first important task, Bhavna, was to get everyone to understand why we need a balanced workforce. Huh? It's like going to an India-Pak cricket match being played in India and trying to cheer the Pakistan team. So that's how it is when you have a male-dominated, workforce which we have to start working with. So it's very important to actually convey why we need a balanced workforce. Especially in India, where we have in the IT industry have beaten to death the cost labor. For right shoring for over 20. To innovate, we need diverse thinking, and to have the diverse thinking, we need to have a diverse and a balanced workforce. Today, the scale is tilted, and therefore there is a need to focus on getting the scale back to balance equally, and that is what we need to focus on. This message was something we had to drill down at all the levels. The next is to look at achieving the balance in the true sense. If we look at freshers coming out of college, as Pankaj had mentioned, we see a very good balance. In fact, in some cases, we see a higher percentage of women versus men. Therefore, getting a balance in the entry level positions was not a problem at all. Most of us have already achieved it. What was the challenge is that there was no pipeline in the second and third levels above that. And that is where we had to focus. We as leaders took on a target of getting all our N-1 and N-2 gender balanced as our own personal target. This helped us to get our hands dirty, scout for profiles, understand the challenges, and work on how to overcome them. This resulted in two things, Bhavna. Demonstrate that achieving gender balance is tough but not impossible. Challenges we face, like focused career intentionality programs, strong referral programs, networking and mobility programs, and the likes. We also started being vocally conscious of being balanced. For example, when we get into a project call or an initiative review, we used to call out to see if we have equal representation of men and women in the call. So, we also leveraged the flexible working that the pandemic landed us in by launching the Shaki Drishtikon project, where we have hired 500 rural women from economically challenging background to be trained and work in the higher end of the technology platform like data center, cloud, and cyber, thereby creating just not jobs, but a career for women.
Great. Thank you, Radhika. Clearly, there are a lot of significant actions that you've taken, and with a very clear set of metrics to also measure the success of everything that you undertook. And it sounds like you had great success with all of those changes. So thank you so much for sharing that. Along the same lines, Saloni, if you can also share, because I know you also spoke about how in many ways, whether it's individually in your own capacity or as a leader, there were some policies that you instituted, some actions that you took intentionally to create that culture of equality. And if we look at the kind of responses we received, almost 30% of the women, so one out of every three women we spoke to said that makes a difference and talked about how they want their organizations to see them as a whole person. So creating that kind of culture goes a long way in allowing us to show up with our whole selves. So can you share what are some of the actions or some of the policies that you instituted that allowed you to create that kind of culture?
Yeah. So Bhavna, first of all, what I feel that why do we have this diversity hiring kind of thing? Because at the back of our mind, when there will be a choice to take a male or female, people tend to choose a male person for the position, and that's the reason organizations have this diversity hiring criteria. So intent is something which has to be there in the organization if they want to have a gender balance or a diverse organization. And that's how, as Radhika also mentioned, that it has to be with a leader only that he or she wants equity in her function or in his function. And it all starts from the hiring, if it is the initial level, and when you have this kind of targets to be given to your leadership, that if you are hiring some of the position, it has to be a female who should come on that position. If organization is giving a target, then manager is bound to have a woman on that particular position. If I talk about our organization in telecom, the sales, sales is something wherein a person has to move around the field, and the second thing is network. These are the two functions wherein people don't hire a female candidate. Well, it was there, and then organization is given a target that you have to hire a female employee in sales. Now, when a manager is having a target, initially there was a hiccup. There were a lot of hesitation that how a female will work in the sales kind of role, wherein you have to go into the rural of the areas, and you have to, work with the kind of, we have our distributors, retailers, pan wala, galla wala person, and that kind of people with whom you have to work. How a female will do, but then you have to trust on a person's capability, and then it all starts from the leadership, that a female can do the same job which a male can do. And it started in our organization where we have started hiring people in sales function. Now, when it is not only, so I'll just give you an example. It is not only that you are hiring female employees, but not taking care of their well-being. So it was a typical point which came in one of the town hall meetings, wherein we had hired a lot of female in the sales force. But if this female has to go to the washroom in the rural area, they were not finding anything. And then it came in one of our town hall meeting, and a female has raised this point to the topmost in the organization, and they realized, yes, we had hired a lot of women, but we have not thought about this point. So what we have done, we have, tied up with the nearby restaurants or some of the shops which have, washroom in their own premises, and we have, created an app wherein a female who is working in sales, and she is in a rural area and she wants to use a washroom, she can open that app, and then app will find out where are the location where she can go for using the washroom. So it is a very simple problem, but it was a big problem, especially when in terms of females. So organization has to take this kind of conscious effort if they are planning to hire women. So that is as a policy part from the organization level, plus from the from the leadership point of view. A leader should always have this thing in their mind that if you are hiring a female, it might be possible. So most of the time what happens when you are giving a target also, people will come to you by saying that, I'm trying from last 1 month, 2 months, I'm not able to fit any female in this position because she doesn't have X, Y, Z, competency or qualification. So what you have to do, okay, if your intent is very high that you want to have a female in this position, then you can hire a female and then groom her, get get all the relevant competency or qualification which is required for that role. And I have done that personally in my team, wherein when I was leading a team wherein there were 25 people and all were men. And then when I have become, responsible to manage the team, whenever a person was leaving, I was hiring a female candidate. And many times it happened that I was not getting a suitable candidate for that role. But if there are 60% to 70% matching criteria was also there, I was picking up that female and then was grooming her, to up to that level where she could contribute the way I want her to contribute in my function. So that is second thing. If you have a strong intent, then you can always hire, and females are very, very committed. So if you are hiring a female, based on her past performance, the way she had, worked in the earlier organization, if you are hiring a new, or if you are grooming up in the same organization in a new role, then the kind of attributes this female has shown in her past project and her past organization or past profile. Based on that, you can always hire and groom her for the level which you are looking for, and that is something which I did, and I succeeded also.
Great. Thank you, Saloni. Such great examples of creating that kind of enabling environment for women by addressing of course, addressing some very specific needs. The example that you shared of the app is such a powerful one to make women feel safe enough, and that, of course, then encourages them to take on more roles in sales, as you said. And secondly, taking a chance on them, even if they're meeting 6 out of the 10 criteria, as a leader, conveying that in many ways goes a long way. Speaking of taking a chance on women, again, going back to our data, one thing that we found really encouraging is when we ran the survey, over 95% of women that we surveyed said they are currently focused on some form of professional growth. In fact, only I think 2% said professional growth is not a priority for them right now. The rest indicated some kind of professional growth. And when we drill down into looking at what are the kinds of professional growth and support that women are looking for, almost 1 out of 4 said they want to be challenged. They want their leaders to push them. And in fact, they feel quite grateful looking back for all the times when their leader challenged them to take on a role or challenged them to do something, even when they themselves did not believe they could. So Simar, I'd love your thoughts on this, on what leaders can do to encourage women to take on these leadership roles. And also, if you can add, are soft nudges enough? Is it enough to just nudge them and encourage them, or do we actually need greater accountability for leaders to actively support such women?
So I'll share the example that we experimented with. So there is a published research about gender differences about confidence, and women are more likely to not apply to a job despite the fact that they might be much better suited or have much better qualifications in comparison to men. There are enough data points about the imposter syndrome, where women feel they don't deserve the job and they're imposters and they will not fake it in the job, while more likely than not, men will fake it and get the job or get the role or get the project or raise their hands and or take risks. So in order to resolve some of these issues that we were looking for in my past life in HSBC, where I used to work till very recently, what we started off was, so one of the big problems was jobs were advertised. We knew there were women who were on the talent list. There were women who had completed their tenure in a particular job, in a particular role. They needed to grow, but they were not applying for jobs or they were not growing. And a very simple nudge that we started was, we said, if there is a job that is advertised, and despite the fact that we wanted an equal panel and only men had applied to that job, we will just nudge the top 50% of the women in that list who are eligible to apply to that job and say, hey, this job is available. Would you be interested? And in that experiment, in every case that we sent a nudge to, each of those candidates came back and said, yes, I'm interested. And each of those experiments, the women who had not originally applied for the job actually got the job after that nudge. And because it was an experiment which was very close to my heart, I was in the interview panel and my standard question to all of these candidates was, you are qualified, you understand this, yeah, you are 80% matched or whatever. You want to move on to do something else. You are raring to go, but then why did you not, are you not aware that this job was advertised? I'm aware the job is advertised. Why did you not apply for the job? Are you not wanting to move? Da, 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 da. And the effective answer was, well, I wasn't sure. Well, I was in two minds. And in more likely than not, I had enough man candidates who had applied to that job, irrespective of the fact that they had no relevant skill in the job. Now, the crux or my hypothesis or my conclusion effectively was that it's not as if the men don't doubt themselves. It's just that they are more willing to take risks on themselves. And in my personal experience of having done loads of jobs with working with loads of managers, every time I've worked with a woman manager versus working with a male manager, the very interesting thing that I've seen is the woman manager has taken more risks on me, or given me a lot more ability to take risks with myself than a male manager has. And a male manager has said, hey, you are good at this. I just want you to do this and solve this for me. Uh, Now, it's not as if they can't take risks. They clearly can take risks, but they don't take risks with them. I don't know why. And I think as leaders, it's our responsibility to give them nudges. I don't think we need to create a program to say, hey, this job is, branded for a diversity candidate or a woman job. We are demeaning the entire purpose with that. But just by doing multiple nudges throughout the journey, I think we can create an equal or as equal a playground, at least for them to get up and say, hey, I'm willing to take that risk.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and having such great success as well in encouraging women through these nudges. I would love to open it up because I know we do have a few questions. So I'm just going to go to the chat here and pick up one of them. So I'm a woman. How do I ensure my junior team members see me as their friend and not as an authority figure? They seem to be resistant in connecting with me, being friendly with me. They connect with each other. When I share my inputs on improving the work, they don't like it. They don't actively seek my inputs. Has anyone faced this? All of them are male professionals in her team, that is. And does that matter? I'll open it up to any one of you who wants to take it. Radhika, would you like to respond?
Sure. So I think this I would love to one acknowledge and say there have been instances where it is not specific that you just have a male boss or a female boss. Always, getting heard is something which is always difficult. So what has worked for me rather is to try and be contextual. So one is raising a voice to ensure that you tell others that you're present. The other point is to see that you are meaningfully contributing. So ensure that you are on the context, and if you're able to bring across a point, and that is when you will definitely get heard. And try the context, and then if somebody is not able to understand and they don't get it, one try and put it in a different manner. And if it is getting a roadblock at the first level or your n+1 level, don't stop there. If you have an idea and it's a good idea, please feel free to go to the next level. Today in all organizations you're in a very open environment, and so unfortunately people use these open environments only for escalations and not for good ideas. This is an open door policy which is there by organization. Use it for your ideas. People are all out. Leaders are very, very conscious to hear from you on good ideas which come up. And just reach out to the next level. And I think one thing which is very important is to build your network within your organizations. So you need to build that network which is beyond your boss.
Yes, absolutely. Another interesting question here.
I can, I wanted to say something, Bhavna, on this. I think I believe in this reciprocity principle that, whatever you are expecting, you have to first do that yourself. So if you want money from your bank account, you need to deposit it there first, right? So I think if you are seeking to influence someone, you got to influence by them first. So in my view, in this case, if you are someone who's going out and seeking some input from them on something that is important to you, and it may have nothing to do with them, I think if you extend your hand, I think then something will happen in return. But if you wait and hope it will happen on its own, it may not happen. So that's one thing that I have learned. This whole reciprocity works very well in both good ways and bad ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's another interesting question. I have encountered scenarios where I was given a feedback. This is also coming from a woman, where I was given feedback that I have not mastered the dark arts requested or required to be successful in a senior role. How do you address this mentality at a senior leadership role, or in general? I think this, because this is something we have heard from quite a few. This, like, to what extent can you be authentic in your style, and to what extent should you adapt according to what the environment is expecting of you?
Simar, I think we need to take this up, because this dark art must have been created by men because they were there first. So maybe let me go first, but I'm sure Simar will have his own examples. So we all hear this, it's very political, and it's this and it's that. You have to play golf and you have to do this and you have to do that, all of those. I mean, you have to smoke and you have to drink and you have to do all those kinds of things. So there are two things over there, I think. One, I think, like I said, the men are far more invested in that activity, which is their career. So they are going to spend their weekend, their evenings, and all of those types of things, and create that whole environment, which is very hard for, I would say, women to do, because for whatever reason, like I said, because they have to succeed in 5 different subjects. This is just one of them. So they don't want to give their evenings or their weekends to this topic, because there's far better things to do. So I think that's one thing to be kept in mind, that how much are you invested in that from a woman perspective? Because, I would feel that at home, women are the one who are creating all the relationships. They are keeping the family together. But in the office, why do you have to be an individual contributor and do only as much as is required to sort of make the team happen for this year and nothing beyond? So I do think that the women, if they want to take a long view, there needs to be some investment in forming relationship and spending time and all of those types of things. At the same time, this whole dark art thing, I don't know. I think you have to also determine what does success mean to you, how much do you want to change. I'm one of those guys who gets up in the morning, I sleep at 10. I've not been in any party or social gathering ever. I consider myself successful because I decide what my success measure is, not someone else. So I would think that there you have to figure out what makes sense. My belief is that there are many different ways you can engage with people. It doesn't have to be, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't go to parties. I still am quite happy. I'm fairly well networked despite all of those things. And that's what I tell people. I tell women that I have all those qualities that all of you have. I still seem to be able to get network with people, so can you. So I have this experience. I'm sure Simar has a different experience, but I think we need to answer this dark art thing.
You're on.
And also just respond to what Pankaj is saying. Pankaj, I think the pandemic actually proved that you don't need to do all that and still, effectively network and effectively go by. So there's been literally no partying at all, and all networking has been virtual, and we have done well. So I think the pandemic has proved it. Your point. Yes, you're right.
Absolutely, and Pankaj, I totally agree. It is men who have created this dark arts or issue about dark arts. But fact of the matter is, like I said, it's about taking a risk. As long as the woman is willing to take a risk and invest in the relevant requirements, I don't see a reason why a woman cannot be successful at those senior jobs or senior roles. Now, two things that I will definitely say: there are clearly perceptions that get driven, or biases that are inherent, and the only way to break that bias, and I think Vidya shared that example, which was very powerful, was to call that bias out right there and then. If she had not called out that bias there and then, she would have lived with that issue and that bias about the fact that she was not the real hard hitter for all practical purposes. But by calling out that bias, and I think that is a very key role that women have to play to be able to call that out. The other piece that we are doing in our current world is we've just launched a male ally program. So effectively, I chair the Women in India network, and as a part of that, we've created a male ally network with senior leaders across the function visibly coming out and taking a pledge that they are going to be male allies to this initiative. And this is an initiative is definitely not a women issue. It is an issue organization wide, and it is an issue that impacts everyone. So we have to enroll more men, and we have to get women to call out the biases a lot more.
And there would be certain areas, like, Saloni pointed out, maybe, sales in rural areas or trading in an investment bank. And there could be areas which are far more amenable to a men's club than others. So I think it will vary. The answers, I think, will vary from area to area as well.
Sticking with this theme of networking and also building visibility for yourself, there's a great question. And especially since each of you does work for a global organization, the question is, how do you find a way to move to the next level as a woman leader in a global delivery organization as a South Asian? Because now there are two challenges that you are working with. One is gender, the other is race or nationality. So how do you build visibility across, of course, in a virtual world, there are other dimensions to that, but would love to hear from any of you how in a global organization one does that.
If I can take the first shot before Pankaj gets his attack at it. But I think in a virtual world, frankly, everything has been created as an equal playground for all practical purposes. There are no longer water cooler conversations, or no longer smoke breaks. There are no longer parties where conversations are happening outside of the working environment. Everyone has access to exactly the same set of rules. But like I shared in the earlier one, I've noticed loads of video conferences where a man is more likely to have his video on versus a woman who would not have her video on. Now, that's a liability that the woman has created for herself, not because she can't switch the video on, but she's just worried about her appearance and worried about what her office appearance was versus what her normal appearance is, and so on and so forth. I think that has to get taken beyond for leveraging that or leveraging that level playing field. I do believe two things that are really critical are the ability to take risk or raise their hands and saying that they can and they will. The pandemic environment provides the flexibility, or the flexible way of working, etc., provides the ability for both men and women to be able to do things at their own time, at their own pace, within the window. And so those liabilities have been taken away.
Mm. Yes. All right.
Another which we normally look at is, a kind of getting some global sponsors. So we have programs, for example, in Capgemini, where we consciously encourage not only women and men, because today we are looking at all of them taking up good global positions. And so we look at sponsors who are global sponsors. So people who are in those kind of roles, which, gives a visibility of the roles which are, just not India restricted. So maintaining a kind of a connect with them, a regular structured connect with them, engaging in some kind of a project, small project, saying that, because women are very much task oriented. So you just don't pick up the phone and say hello and keep chatting with somebody. You tend to be more effective if it is result oriented or a task oriented. So we find it more effective that you get into some small project which is beyond your scope, or which involves a larger network of people. So it becomes meaningful networking, and it actually helps you to actually showcase your capabilities to the team which is beyond your normal organization. So this works effectively as well.
Great. Thank you, Radhika.
Even I do believe, Bhavna, networking, as we say, networking is the very powerful tool. But what happens generally, so if you have some work, you can always write a mail also. But if get a chance, you can go up to the person's, place and then talk to them. So when you go and talk to them, it's not always a work related. You can start with an informal note, and then, as Radhika mentioned, it has to be task oriented or result oriented networking. Otherwise, So most of the women, they are not able to differentiate the meaning of networking. So the networking is not only just say hi, hello, and gossip. It should be a result oriented networking wherein person understand what do you do. So either woman, you keep quiet, sitting in a corner of in the office and not being noticed or not being heard, or otherwise if you go walk to someone's place and talk about what you do, and so then you will be noticed. The second thing is whenever you have in a boardroom meeting, you have to be courageous, you have to speak up, so that people will notice you. You have to create your own visibility, and that's how you get to interact with more and more people and get get noticed. So that is something which I feel that that is very important.
Yes, being purposeful about networking and intentional about building your visibility. Great. Thank you so much, all of you. In the interest of time, we'll bring this to a conclusion, and we'll move now to sharing our research findings with you. And if there is time left, in the end, we encourage you to keep sharing your questions on the chat for any of our panelists, and hopefully if there's time, we'll come back to them. But thank you so much, Saloni, Radhika, Pankaj, and Simar. This was a great conversation, and it's been wonderful to have your support and insights for this research. I am now going to turn it over to Manisha Singh, who heads our coaching practice and in fact has really played the lead role in this entire research effort, and therefore she is the best person to share some key insights from the study with you.
Thank you, Bhavna. I'd like to begin by thanking two key people who've really helped us put this together. Professor Shreyashi Chakravarti, who's the chairperson at XLRI Center for Gender Equality and Inclusive Leadership. She's also Assistant Professor of Organizational Behavior at the Xavier School of Management, XLRI Jamshedpur. Thank you so much, Shreyashi, for supporting us right from the beginning, right since the, ever since the inception of this research study, walking the path with us. And Shravani Prakash, who's our research consultant, who has very patiently helped us put this study together through several iterations. And with that, I'll share with you the number one question that inspired us to take on the study. And in our work that we've been doing for the past 6 years, one question that kept on coming to us in various forms was, what does it take to get to the top roles? Decode this for us. We have the ambition, we are willing to put in the effort. Which direction should we put that effort in? And that's what inspired us to undertake a qualitative research study. We thought that would give us a chance for a conversation. And we interviewed around 100 leaders from across industries and sectors. And we also supplemented the study with a quantitative survey. And once we had all the data, when we looked at it, we realized that it was so multidimensional that probably one report is inadequate and would not do justice to what we had managed to amass in terms of data and information. And hence we decided to create a series of 4 reports. And what we are giving you a glimpse of is the first report in this series. And what we have tried to come up with, inspired by Pankaj, like Pankaj was mentioning, a framework. So we thought we'll also try to create a framework. And we looked at the competencies that were emerging, sliced and diced the data in different ways. And 9 key competencies that you see on the screen emerged. When we put these 9 together, we saw something very interesting. We saw that these 9 were interrelated and they beautifully fitted into 3 different realms that each of us move around in. Our inner realm, which is where we do all the deep work on us, we reflect and competencies which fell in this realm were self-awareness, courageous mindset, and resilient agility. Then comes the intersectional realm, which is an overlap between our inner realm and the interface between our ecosystem. The realm where we choose our responses to, in response to everyday decisions that we have to make. And here, what showed up through our research study were 3 competencies: human-centered leadership, emotional intelligence, and assertiveness. And finally, the outer realm, where what transpires in the first 2 realms becomes very visible, and has the potential to translate into tangible results and visible presence for leaders. And the 3 competencies that showed up here were networking, business acumen, and visibility. In our report, we have gone in depth in each of the 9 competencies, explaining what each of these are, first-hand quotes from leaders in terms of what they think about these competencies, so that you get a flavor of how they view it, why they consider it important, skills that support these competencies, also taking cue from all the information we had from leaders as to what has helped them get to top roles, and also given where we are, what do they foresee would be skills that we would need to support this competency, looking at the evolving landscape, and also best practices for organizations to support these competencies, or in the ecosystem that enables leaders to strengthen these competencies. What we decided was that today we would give you a glimpse of each of these 3 realms, and we picked up 1 competency each, which we thought is not spoken about usually. So in the inner realm, we picked up self-awareness. And through our research, what we understood was that at the heart of leadership really lies that discernment and distinction as to what is really important to us as a leader. Why do we want to lead? Why are we excited about it? What is our unique vision? What are the strengths that we want to bring into play? Are there any areas of opportunities that we want to work on to become better leaders? As well as the awareness of how we see others. So a combination of internal self-awareness about who we are, what we bring to the table, and also external self-awareness as to who are we in the eyes of others. Is there an alignment? An interesting statistic that emerged for us was that over 70% women we surveyed believe that they possess a high level of internal self-awareness, but only 33% believe that they possess a high level of external self-awareness. So taking a cue from what came up in our research study, a recommended action that we thought would support development of this competency was to seek feedback, regular 360-degree feedback, professionally, as well as from family and friends who know you well. And taking feedback can be intimidating. Working with it constructively can also be hard, difficult, unless there's a safe environment. And hence, I think creating that safe space with trusted advisors, coaches, mentors, leaders who you feel comfortable with to process this feedback and really work on it such that you are able to bring in objectivity and also derive concrete actions is an action that really helps strengthen this competency. And for organizations to really focus on creating programs that have an inside-out approach where women are supported through discovering these aspects of self-awareness that contribute to leadership, and also get to discover what is their unique value proposition as a leader. What do they bring to the table? And here is a quote that really spoke to us. It's a quote by Bobby Joy, Director, Innovation and Learning from APAC Salesforce. And in his interview, he said that I believe the essential competency for a woman today is self-awareness. what do I really stand for? What are my strengths? What are my opportunities? If I have complete clarity on this, I will know exactly how to do it. And this he shares from his own experience of what has helped him and what he observes while grooming his teams. Moving on to the next competency from the intersectional realm, we thought today we'll share human-centered leadership as one of the competencies from this realm. And at the heart of this competency is what Saloni mentioned earlier, balancing a result-oriented mindset, balancing deriving results, driving results with sensitivity towards the impact of how we are driving those results and the overall welfare of those who are in our teams. It's also striking a balance in our conversations with our teams between what part of those conversations are purely performance and what part of those conversations are truly devoted to development of those team members, and how are we as leaders bringing our experience, our knowledge, our skills to developing the employees, and keeping an eye that just performance discussions don't overshadow all the the entire conversations whenever we meet those team members. Sharing an interesting statistic from our quantitative survey, 230 respondents who answered our question about what are leadership traits that they feel create an environment where one can thrive and grow. Top 3 traits that were chosen were indicative of human-centered leadership, and they were around leadership that creates a collaborative environment that is encouraging and creates that spirit of resilience in team members, encourages them to take those risks in a safe environment, making it okay for them to fail. And speaking about one recommended action is really, creating that internal guidance system to balance business impact and human impact in the decisions that we make as leaders. And for organizations to weave in human-centeredness into a core business value so that it becomes very natural for leaders to also focus and address emotions, needs, and fears of employees so that that part is taken care of and they can bring their best to the workplace. And I think a lot of leaders have showcased this in the last year during the pandemic by acknowledging how challenging that uncertainty was for all of us. And this is a quote by Panish PK, Managing Director from Cisco. And he says, there's been a change in leadership style from dominance, command, and control to encouragement and collaboration. Some personality traits that help in cultivating a leadership style like that are empathy, seeing the bigger picture, and being collaborative. The third competency that we thought we'll touch upon from the third realm, which is the outer realm, is business and acumen. And that refers to really building that deep understanding of what really drives success, what is the path that the organization has chosen to take, what are the highest priorities at this time, and constantly aligning with it, because sometimes there may be a need to seamlessly shift gears, and that needs connectedness and vigilance to understand, okay, what are the shifts that are happening. Out of the women in top roles that we interviewed, 30% said that this was one of the top 5 competencies that helped them get to where they are today. And 15% of the aspiring women leaders said that they were already actively working on building this competency. One action that we feel will really help develop this competency is to leverage every opportunity that comes up, whether it's through forums or one-on-ones, to connect with business heads and really understand from them what is the vision that they are driving, why is it important, what are the factors that are impacting that they think will impact the success in their business units, and for organizations to provide those opportunities to women to challenge them to solve certain complex business problems that involve exposure to P&L, strategic clients, and also fixing business problems. And here's a quote from Avesh Jha, Senior Vice President from Hinduja Global Solutions. And he says, understanding of the business and talking the business language in terms of top line, bottom line, revenue growth, gross profit and net profit, NPS, CSAT, and so on is important. When you're taking any action, how do you see it through the lens of business? What to expect from us in the coming quarters? So our next 3 reports will focus on highlighting challenges that women leaders face, focus on really what organizations can do to play a larger role in the success of women leaders, and also an overview of what will it take for us to collectively work towards this, women leaders, who are aspiring women leaders like yourselves who are looking to support them, enablers like us who create programs to support them. So all of us, what will it take for all of us to come together and create pathways for not just temporary success, but long-lasting, sustainable success for women leaders? Yes, with that, would really love to hear what are the first impressions, thoughts, ideas, questions coming to your mind. Please put them in the chat box. Whether they're for the Shenomics team, whether they're for the panelists, or whether they're just thoughts, we would love to hear from you. I can see with Indra saying very excited to see the snippets from the reports. Any other thoughts? Indra says, especially the call to action scenarios. Thank you, Indra.
I have an observation. When I went to a good business school, there were several women, many of them married batchmates. And when I look now, many of them have just taken a break, and the men continue to work. And I talk to a lot of them. And there's always one reason or the other. Either the man is earning more, and it's good to have, if we have to have one income, let it be his and not mine. And there are many reasons, and there's nothing right or wrong. I think they're pretty happy with what they're doing. So I think there has been, despite a lot of women being super educated, all of that, there is this thing of dropping out, not necessarily at the time of maternity, but maybe at a later date as well. So there is this thing that we need to acknowledge that it exists and try to, like I said, over generations, try to change that. I've been trying with my 2 daughters, so I'm hoping to do my bit and whoever I come across. But I think there's a like I said, we need to first acknowledge that there is an issue, and the issue is far deeper than on the surface. So while all these targets and many of those things are good, I think the fundamental nature and the structure of the society drives many of these things, and those deep-rooted beliefs are there. And we need to, I think, work upon them on how you're raising your boys. I don't have any, so I don't know what to do. But yeah, I think many of those things have to be worked upon.
That's a great observation, Pankaj. And in fact, actually, it reminded me of the conversation I had with you, Vidya. I remember you sharing that it's not as black and white as it seems. We assume women are dropping out to take care of or for personal reasons, but it's actually a more complex issue. So I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but yeah, would love for you to share some of the insights you had shared on this topic.
Yeah.
Okay, I managed to unmute myself. It's funny that you say that, Pankaj, and I'm a living example of that. And believe me, I gave it so much of thought before I decided that I wanted to take the break. And there are a variety of reasons, but now as I hear the discussion and as I reflect on the last many months of being at home, I think one of the I'll go back to your, the first point that you made, I think at the beginning, Pankaj, that I think we care too deeply. I know that sounds very philosophical, but as women, the need to be, really good at whatever the 5 subjects or the 5 disciplines, I think is so embedded deeply in who we are, that when we feel one of those is, really shaking, and while I know I was never perfect at all 5 of them, and I was willing to give myself the the benefit of doubt that it's okay if I'm not always there for XYZ. But I think when that inflection begins to tip over too much on either side, then I think you're really forced to, ask yourself, like, does this make sense in the context of my entire life? As far as, your broader, like, children and what else you're doing, the question of, is it worth it? Really, comes into people's minds. And I've seen this in organizations as well, where the sacrifices have to be worth it. There has to be sufficient challenges that are being provided. There has to be sufficient pay that is being provided. If I'm not getting all of that in comparison to, male colleagues, then it's very easy for me to opt out, because the alternative just sounds so much better. And I think it's a combination of pay, its challenges, its position, its promotions, all of it put together. And while some of it is very personal, where you just want to step back and spend time with your kids or whatever, but I think increasingly I feel that's less the case. It's not about, oh, I want to spend more time with my children. It's really, if I'm going to spend this 12 hours at work, I want it to be like meaningful. It has to add to my role. It has to add to my brand. It has to add to my pay and all of it. So we are not, I don't think we're seeing as many women leaving because they want to take care of their children. I really think we are beyond, we are beyond that. But it's the more holistic growth that I am putting as much as any other employee is putting in, but am I receiving the same in return? And when you feel like that imbalance is too much, then you're like, my brains are better served doing something, doing something else, which need not simply be sit at home. I could engage myself in so many other, other activities. It's a whole separate topic, Bhavna.
No, I think, like I said earlier, for the men, it's an easy choice. They are programmed to have that as an integral part of their identity, because there's pretty much nothing else. So there's no debate around there. For women, because there's so many choices, you can choose to sort of ignore the work part of your identity in a way it was to do something else, because you have choices. So I do think that many a time the women have prioritized the work part as a place to, either earn money or something that needs to be done, not an integral part of the identity, and for right reasons. So I do think that there are those differences which are out there. Nothing is right or wrong, but we need to acknowledge them and then see what needs to change. They will never go away, but yeah, they can come somewhere in the middle.
Well, I also don't think that the society places the same type of expectations, right? That, oh, if I leave my job, it's not like, my parents or whoever are going to like be behind me saying, what have you done? If the same thing my husband had done or my brother had done, like, oh, you left this big job, like, what were you thinking? The reaction to me was, oh, finally you can, like, take care of your children, which sounds pathetic, but like, there's no pressure, right? So unless I feel that pressure, I'm also not like, I pushed myself for those 20 years, but now I'm like, okay, even when I quit, my family is not like jumping up and down saying, what the hell, like, you've lost such an amazing opportunity. But if it was, a male who had done that, I do feel that the society views that very differently and questions far more, versus if it's a woman, it's sort of like, oh, you're naturally expected to take it easy.
So I know several women who have told me that, my husband doesn't have an option to drop out. I think I have the option if I feel like. He sometimes tell me, I said, you don't have the option. You got to continue to work. But if I feel like I can work out, so they feel proud that they have that option. There's nothing wrong in it. I'm just saying, like you rightly said, the society is wired differently. Even those working women are saying, one day maybe I'll take a break for a couple of years, but he doesn't have that opportunity.
Pankaj, I think to solve for this root cause, we have to change that narrative, and that narrative is built by Bollywood and social media and parents and relatives and everything else. But unless we change that narrative, we will not fix the problem. So uh, typically, a woman ends up doing 8 hours of care job apart from the 12 hours that is expected at home. And if a man does dishes for 30 minutes, the man is so proud to So say I've been doing dishes to support my wife, whatever.
Take a selfie and put it on Facebook.
Yeah, correct. So that is what has to change for all practical purposes.
What I feel is that women understand that it is solely her responsibility to manage the home as well. And as somebody has rightly mentioned, that they don't delegate, they even don't delegate or the home responsibilities also. If we take support from our family, then I think women can also do the same kind of thing which a men does. So you have to share the responsibility with your spouse, maybe with your children, maybe with your brother, sister. So if you do that very well, then you are balancing your life in a very, very effective manner, and then you can justice with your job as well. So that is somewhere where, most of the women are lacking, where they take all the responsibility in their shoulders.
And we have created a system where we encourage that. We said, oh, you're so good. You're doing it all. Wow, continue to do it while I sit back and relax.
And I, in fact, like Pankaj's statement that, there's a phases in our life. So in one particular phase, we can always choose, okay, enough with the, this responsibility. Now for next 5 years, I have to be a career oriented, not a complete, to the family front. So there are some sacrifices which one has to make if they want to achieve something in their career, where most of the time we put priority to our personal front than our professional front.
Bhavna, you must be worried we are overshooting now. I can see that.
Not at all. It's such an interesting conversation. I wish we had more time to really dig into it. But I think this conversation is case in point of how thorny this question and this challenge is of how do we get women to stay in the workforce and go all the way to the top, and so many players have to play a role here: the family, the society, the organizations, women, everyone. So there's so much to this. So at Shenomics, of course, we're excited to continue digging, continue exploring, continue uncovering what is it going to take. So thank you everyone for chiming in with your insights. It's been a truly insightful and enriching conversation, and really thankful for each and every one of you for your support. Pankaj, Radhika, Saloni, Vidya, Simar, all of the 100 people that we spoke to, and all of the 300 people who also shared their responses through the survey. So we shall continue this dialogue, continue this conversation. It is only the beginning. But yes, on that note, I'm going to just hand it back to Divya to do a final close.
Thank you, Bhavna. And like she was saying, I think we can talk about this endlessly, and we have such a great group of individuals to talk about this topic as well. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. We have shared a link on the chat box where if you click on it, you can submit your request to get the report, and we will be sending out the report to you sometime early next week. Like Bhavna was saying, this is just a start. We are just kicking off our conversations because this is not something that we can, close in one conversation. But these conversations are so important to have. And we'll be having a series of this over this year. Thank you so much to our amazing panel, to Vidya. Thank you for being with us and for sharing your insights from your experience. It was so enlightening just listening to all of you talk to each other and share perspectives here. And have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us here.
Our pleasure, Saloni.